Welcome back, students. Welcome to Scholar IAS current affair classes. So I hope you are all eager to know the current developments. Without any delay, let's get into the class. The first article is on IITs and reservation in IITs. Students, this is related to your GS2 paper. Okay. First, let's try to understand what is in the news. So there has been increased demand for teachers at IITs. Okay, and also the faculty positions, many number of faculty positions remain vacant. In addition to this, the Education Ministry also has mandated all IITs to fully meet the norms of reservation in filling faculty position. So this is about the news. Let's try to understand it more in detail one by one. First thing we will understand is why there is a demand for teachers, why the demand actually has increased for teachers at IITs. So between 2008-10, okay, the student intake capacity has actually increased almost by over 50%. Why it has happened? Because of the reservation for OBC students that was introduced. In addition to that, the number of IITs was also increased between the period 2008 to 2017, and along with this, the reservation for economically weaker section got added. Okay, all these factors led to what? The strain in the ratio of students to teachers. Okay, so this ratio, the number of teachers for student got affected. That's why the demand for teachers has increased. But there are certain challenges associated with recruitment, because recruitment at IITs has to happen as per reservation norms provided under central laws. We will see what are those central laws after this section. So what happens if we want to find candidates as per reservation norms? There are certain difficulties, because candidates belonging to reserved categories going to this research in engineering and technology is not enough. The number of candidates is not enough from this particular category. Okay, also among those candidates from the reserved categories going into research, those who actually opt for teaching career is very less. So what happens? The availability pool is getting restricted, and the IITs have to recruit from this available pool. So this restricted availability pool. So this is the main challenge associated with recruitment based on reservation norms. So which laws basically guide reservations at IITs? I told you that the central laws actually provide for the reservation norms, and now let's see which are those laws. So for student admissions, the Central Education Institution Reservation and Admission Act 2006 lays down the reservation norms. But for teachers appointments, this is what we are looking at right now. This article deals with. This is dealt by Central Education Institution Reservation Teacher Cadre Act 2019. So these are the provisions that actually deal with reservations in IITs. So we saw that there is breadth of resource availability, talented resource availability to get recruited in IITs based on the reservation norms. I told you the reasons before. But now let's try to understand how this challenge can be tackled. Actually, government appointed a committee, Ram Gopal Rao committee. Okay, and this committee made some recommendations to tackle this challenge. One first recommendation was that it asked government to include IITs in the schedule to the Central Education Institution Reservation in Teachers Cadre Act. Okay, this is the act I told you that deals with reservation for recruitment. So by adding IITs to the schedule of this particular act, it can exempt IITs on faculty reservation norms. Actually, this exemption has been given to some of the national institutions of importance, like institutes of excellence. There have been some institutes of excellence that have been given this priority, this leniency. So the committee has recommended similar provisions to be adopted for IITs as well, similar exemptions to be given for IITs as well. And the second recommendation is that dereservation. Okay, so basically the committee says that if no suitable candidate has been found in a particular year for recruitment, then that particular position has to be de-reserved. Let's say out of 10 seats, 5 seats have been reserved for a certain category of people. Then if you can't find for 2 people or 3 people in that reserved category, then those seats has to be de-reserved. Okay, so that even the general category can come and fill that seat, so that the student teacher ratio doesn't get affected. And another important recommendation made by this committee is the launch of a 2-year research assistantship. Okay, basically the reason for asking government to launch such a assistantship program is that you can retain candidates actually. Okay, those who have actually got into this research field, you can retain them through assistantship, and they can also be given an option to pursue PhD studies, and so that they can be used, they can be a potential resource for the IITs also in recruitment. So the talent pool, the availability of talent pool would not get affected, and the IITs would have more talent to pick from to fill their faculty position. So students, this is about IITs and reservation article. This is also a potential question because it deals with a sensitive matter called reservation, and if you remember, previously we saw some articles on in previous days we saw some articles around this reservation. So these has to be linked all together to understand get a better idea about the reservation policy itself. Yesterday, if you remember, there was an article where the Supreme Court dealt with the reservation policies. So make a note of all these points and try to interlink them and use it in your mains answers. Okay. The second article is regarding FTS and India. Okay, so this is also related to your GS2 paper, international relations section. Okay, and the news is about India's decision for not joining RCEP, that is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Okay, and if you had observed, there has been multiple articles on this issue. So it is a potential, it can be potentially asked in your mains exam as well. So get a holistic understanding by trying to know all the aspects around this issue. Okay, so first let's try to get into this article. So India's decision for not joining RCEP has been welcomed by many sections in the society, many sections of the society, Indian society, because joining RCEP itself was seen to hurt the Indian economy. Why is it so? There are two main reasons. Let's see one by one. The first one being the poor experience with FTAs. So we have already had, India had multiple FTAs with many countries. From that experience, India has, those FTAs has not been in favor of India, because exports to FTAs, okay, the nations with which FTAs India had, the exports to those countries did not surpass the non-FTA countries or the rest of the world. Even the imports out of those FTAs was increasing more than the export. So what happened? There is a deficit already. A trade deficit is there, and it got widened further because of these trade deals. And also, this low utilization rates of FTAs by Indian exporters was between it was just between 5 to 25%. So these points to what? FTAs not being in favor of Indian market, Indian economy. And the second reason is geopolitical reasons. So in case of RCEP, China is the major issue for us, because we have several border issues, border disputes with China. So it also hindered India from joining RCEP. Though the reason for not joining RCEP is more appropriate to a certain extent, there are certain drawbacks to it associated with it for not joining RCEP. Let's see one by one. The first major thing is that the competition. When you withdraw from FTAs, what happens? The Indian domestic producers are not actually competing with external market. So this actually encourages inefficient domestic producers. Okay, these producers keep producing whatever they have been producing, at that too with higher prices, because there is no proper competition for them to compensate them. Okay, there is no other alternative available. What happens? Who gets affected because of this? The consumers. Okay, so this is the first major drawback that Indian markets will face. The second thing is related to import duties. Okay, so what happens now? We don't have FTAs with these nations. Then what happens when we import something from them? There would be duties that would be charged on those imports. This would again increase the price of the product that is being produced out of those imported products. Okay, so any product that has been imported from, let's say, Singapore or China or any other country, it's going to be an input in some other industry, some other domestic industry. So what happens naturally when import duties increase? the production of that particular product will also get increased. I mean, the price for production of that particular product will also get increased. Along with this, and there is just because we don't have any FTAs, the exports from our country will also get affected, because those countries will prefer to trade with the countries that they have FTAs with. Singapore would be preferring to trade with Malaysia because they have FTAs with that particular nation, or with Australia because they have FTAs with each of them. So they would be preferring to trade with them, and what happens, import would be increasing for us, at the same time exports from our countries to those nations would get affected, thereby increasing the trade deficit further. And also, because import duties has been increased in our country, inflation will also happen in domestic in our country. And the next thing is that we cannot always blame FTAs for India's poor performance, Indian domestic industry's poor performance, because most of the MSMEs are not even aware of the duty benefits under various FTAs. Okay, so what happens, they are not utilizing the existing FTAs to promote themselves or to expand their market. So it is because of our underutilization, the FTAs are not in favor of India. So these things being said, there is also another thing that India has to consider. Due to COVID, India even is trying to strengthen its supply chain, global supply chain. The global supply chain itself is getting affected. It got affected because of this pandemic, and now India, along with many other countries, is trying to strengthen the supply chain. And in this scenario, by not entering RCEP, we are not actually getting into this global supply chain, and India gets missed out. When India gets missed out of global supply chain, it actually affects India's export and as well as import to a certain extent. One more thing we have to observe here is the contradictions India has. Though India says that FTAs are not in favor of India's domestic market, there is certain contradictions India follows, because despite opposing FTAs like RCEP, India is trying to sign free trade deals with other top exporting destinations. Okay, so what happens? The trade policy itself is contradicting. So what India is doing? It is actually coming out of a trading bloc, citing the FTA is not in favor of India, but at the same time it is individually entering into FTAs with individual nations. So this contradiction in the trade policy is not a welcoming thing, because the trade policy has to be consistent in multiple aspects, in all aspects, so that a long roadmap is visible for the domestic market as well as for the trading partners. So these are some of the let's say drawbacks and loopholes in India's withdrawal from RCEP, and how India is going to actually balance this issue is a major question that India has to look into and try to resolve through its efficient trade policies. Students, this is all about FTAs and India article. For more current affair articles as well as videos, subscribe to our channel and visit our platform. Until next video, happy learning. See you. Bye bye.